Hey, it's the Dr. White, and I'm back at the Dr. Whiteboard talking some more about dry eye. So far we've covered what your tears are, we've covered what kind of symptoms you might get from dry eye, so I thought maybe we'd talk about the types of dry eye, and if we have time, maybe we can talk about the politics of Italian salad dressing, but maybe not. So, types of dry eye. It turns out that there are multiple different types of dryness in dry eye. The most common one makes the most sense. I don't have enough tears. My eyes are dry because I don't make enough tears. Pretty simple. How do we diagnose this? Well, a couple things. If we look at the eye, we will look at every part of the front of the eye. Thing number one is we look at your tears. We look to see how deep is the level of your tears just above your lower eyelid. How deep is your tear lake? If it's really low, I'm suspicious that maybe you don't make enough tears. The next thing we do is we actually measure your tear production by doing something called a Schirmer test. We put a little filter paper just inside the lower eyelid, and then we measure how much lubrication. How far did you wet that paper in 5 minutes? Now we numb up your eye so we know we're not getting reflex tearing. Anytime you get something in your eye, even if you don't make enough tears minute to minute, you'll make tears. So that's the Schirmer test. The normal probably is anything over 10 or 12 millimeters. If you're under 8 or 6, you're probably pretty dry. The next thing is tear osmolarity. How salty are your tears? We'll do a whole Dr. Whiteboard about that, but really briefly, what we do is take just the littlest bit of your tears through something called a micropipette, and then we measure how salty they are. Our tears are salty, just like the ocean. Some tears are saltier than others. The Great Salt Lake in Utah is way saltier than the Atlantic Ocean. The higher the tear osmolarity, the more abnormal. So if you have a very high tear osmolarity, the likelihood is that you have a dry eye and that it's a low tear problem. And lastly, we put dye inside your eye. And the dye allows us to look at your tears, but it also shows us, do you have individual dry spots? Are there some dry spots on the cornea? Maybe there are dry spots on the conjunctiva, on the white part of the eye. But when we put the dye called fluorescein or lissamine green inside, if there's dryness, the eye will stain. So we look at 3 things, or 4 things. We look at how much tear production do you have? What's your Schirmer test? How wet can you make that filter paper? What's your tear osmolarity? Are you too salty? Not your language. We don't want any of that. And if we put some dye in, will you have staining? So the first and actually most common type of dry eye is, I don't make enough tears. We'll talk about some of the others as time goes on. But for now, we're talking about the types of tears. Here at the Dr. Whiteboard, I'm still the Dr. White. We'll see you again.